What do preserved baby animals, a screaming corpse, and brutally chopped off body parts have in common? Well, these disturbing things were all
I don't know about y'all, but that looked like something was trying to reach out the ground before it died. It was like it was trying to crawl out of something.
all found in Egypt. But what's behind these bizarre discoveries? How much do we really know about that distant past? And most importantly, what ancient relics still slumber beneath the hot desert sands? Stay tuned and set off with us into the legendary age of pharaohs and pyramids.
See, they never cease to amaze me, bro. You just look at this and be like, man, how did they do this? The artwork, though, just beautifully done. Talent.
The Screaming Mummy. When we have to say goodbye to a loved one, we are left with only one hope. The person has found peace and is now in a better place. However, things are a little different in the case of the disturbing mummy that was tracked down in the ancient necropolis of Deir el-Bahari. On the lips of the deceased has burned, namely an eternal, mute death cry. If we now take a look
I ain't gonna lie, seeing that makes me think it was buried alive.
at the other mummies, which were always buried with closed mouths and in straight posture, a realization arises. The wide open mouth, the head tilted to the right, and the bent legs can simply not be a coincidence. So, what led to the screaming mummy being laid to rest in this grotesque manner? Did she meet the same fate as Pentawar? Also recovered at Deir el-Bahari, we are dealing here with the son of Ramses III. However, the royal scion came under suspicion of plotting against his father, which is why he was forced to take his own life. Subsequently, Pentuar's body was not mummified, but wrapped in sheepskin. He was thus considered impure and had booked a free ticket to hell. To crack the mystery of the screaming woman, Zahi Hawass and Sahar Salim.
And y'all call us nowadays ruthless. Don't get me wrong, some of the stuff you see on the news is just unbearing to watch. But stuff that they did, the consequences they bestowed on people for doing wrong back then, fam, it'd be a lot nicer around this country and this planet if it was like back in the day.
Subjected the mummy to a CT scan. The results of the scan indicated that the woman died in her 60s and that she was actually very honorably mummified. After removal of the internal organs and treatment with precious resins and perfumes, her body was carefully wrapped in pure linen. Therefore, experts suspect that the circumstances of the unknown woman's death were different from Pentuar's. In addition, the results of the computer tomography revealed that the dead woman was struggling with severe atherosclerosis, that is, the pathological storage of fats in the arterial blood vessels. Consequently, it is conceivable that the screaming mummy succumbed to a heart attack. The so-called Papyrus Ebers shows that the ancient Egyptians were well aware of the symptoms of an approaching heart attack, even though they referred to it as Wad disease. Regarding the woman, the study concludes that she died suddenly of a heart attack, and in the very posture that she still exhibits today. The deceased probably lay in this position for a long period of time before it was discovered. Since the muscles and joints had already stiffened by this time, it was not possible to move the body into the usual burial position. The Lion Tomb. In November 2019, the Egyptian Ministry of Antiquities announced the sensational discovery. Experts have found a gigantic number of ancient artifacts and mummified animals in Saqqara. The special thing? The animal burial site also contained the rare remains of at least 2 lion cubs. The bottom line is that the find included 75 cat statues and 25 decorated wooden boxes containing the mummified bodies of the quadrupeds. In addition, the researchers recovered figurines of birds, bulls, and a mongoose. Crocodiles, cobras, and scarabs were also among the mummified animals. Completed by numerous statues of gods, amulets, scrolls, drawings, and death masks, the Egyptian Minister of Antiquities described the trove as so rich that it alone could fill an entire museum. An object bearing the royal name, Sebenetich I, dates the artifacts to the 26th dynasty, that is, to the period between the years 664 and 610 BC. The discovery of 5 mummified cats of prey caused a particular stir. Two of them should have turned out in context of a CT scan as lion cubs, which died at the age of 8 months. What made it special? This was the first time ever that a fully preserved lion mummy was discovered in Egypt.
Yeah, I've never.
I
don't think I've ever, in the amount of time we've been researching and doing these videos, where I've heard them say a lion. I've heard of cats. I've heard of alligators. I've heard of other animals that they've mummified, but never heard of a lion.
A fully preserved lion mummy was discovered in Egypt.
Wow.
What began as the offering of sacred sacrifices in the form of animal mummies soon developed into a veritable industry. For example, millions of cats and dogs were bred in ancient Egypt specifically for ritual mummification. Bloody trophies. The fact that ancient corpses are recovered in ancient Egypt is, in and of itself, not yet a rarity. However, what the experts found on the site of a former palace in the ancient city of Arus was clearly different from anything that had gone before. Instead of a classic burial chamber, the researchers found 4 pits in which someone had placed 16 chopped off hands. 2 of the pits, located in front of the presumed throne room, contained 1 hand each. The remaining 2 pits, located at a slightly later date, again contained the 14 remaining hands. The detailed analysis showed that the body parts were buried about 3,600 years ago, that is, at a time when the palace was used by King Shahan. In detail, we are dealing with a ruler from the ranks of Hyksos. This group of foreign rulers was in power in Egypt for over 100 years. But what was the background to this appalling practice? What is certain is that the cutting off of hands was subject to a fixed pattern, without exception. These were right hands, carefully cut off and placed in such a way that they were noticed by everyone. And even if we do not know from whom the hands originated, it is considered certain that cutting off the right hand was a practice carried out by both the Hyksos and the Egyptians. Thus, cutting off the hands not only facilitated the counting of defeating enemies, but also fulfilled a symbolic purpose. One took away the opponent's strength and power. While this gruesome find represents the first physical evidence of this ritual being performed, it has been mentioned before in some ancient Egyptian writings and artwork. One of these accounts is found in the tomb of Amhos, an Egyptian officer who fought against the Hyksos. It states, "Then I seized an enemy, and I brought a hand, so that it was reported to the royal herald." For his efforts, Amhos was again awarded the Gold of Valor. The Gold Mummy.
Wow.
In January of this year, an exciting entry was added to the list of ancient Egyptian mummy finds. In the necropolis of Saqqara slumbered the remains of a man named Hekashepes, who lived around the year 2300 BC and was placed in a limestone sarcophagus after his death. Furthermore, his arms and legs had been individually wrapped to give the body a lifelike appearance. At the same time, the head was painted with eyes, a mouth, and dark hair. Even more striking, however, are the golden leaves that create the illusion of sparkling skin. If one follows ancient Egyptian beliefs, gold was the color of the gods. Accordingly, the gilding of the bodies represented the idea that the dead attained divine qualities in the afterlife. Thus, Hekashepes' relatives could take comfort in the fact that he would be reborn and rejuvenated in the kingdom of heaven, and henceforth enjoy his favorite food and drink with the gods for all eternity. In a nearby tomb, archaeologists also discovered a group of well-preserved limestone statues representing men, women, and children.
You could tell these type of burials were sacred, right? For the most part, how many people you know are going to bury somebody in gold and then not worry or you not see it being stolen, rummaged, pillaged by people who maybe just going through hard times at the moment, come through stealing, trying to make a buck, trying to make some money, need it for food or whatever they needed for back then. You had to know this was sacred because they probably believed if they did mess with it or interfere in what the gods would do to them. You know what I'm saying? So it had, like, their burial process was respected. I could just tell.
Such figures, which only the wealthiest members of society could afford, were placed in the tomb as reserve bodies.
See, all the wealthy stuff is placed in the tomb, and it's remaining in there. That's just crazy. It's hard to believe.
It could be inhabited by the so-called Ka after death. Ancient knowledge. Have you ever wondered how it is even possible for us nowadays to decipher ancient Egyptian hieroglyphics?
Yes.
After all, the ancient characters have not been used for centuries. The fact that we are still able to reveal the wisdom, beliefs, and rituals of antiquity is probably thanks to a clumsy horse. According to a story, on July 15, 1799, the horse stumbled over an unusual stone that was half sticking out of the ground. French officer Pierre-François Xavier Bouchard, who was on the horse's back, then identified the stumbling stone as a fragment of an ancient Egyptian stele. The special thing, since the so-called Rosetta Stone contained inscriptions in 3 different languages, researchers were henceforth able to match the hieroglyphs with ancient Greek and demonic texts.
That's the first time I heard the story attached to the Rosetta Stone. I knew that's what they were referencing to, but I never heard how it was found like that. A horse stumbling over a rock. Wow.
Revolutionizing the translation of mystical symbols. The Rosetta Stone thus marks a groundbreaking find that also helps us understand the 16-meter papyrus roll found in a sarcophagus at Saqqara. A papyrus of this size and quality had not been discovered in over a century. The restored contemporary testimony, dating from 50 BC, contains passages from the Egyptian Book of the Dead and was on display at the Egyptian Museum in Cairo. The funerary text, which was buried with the deceased in his tomb, contains explanations, hymns, and spells to help the deceased master the treacherous journey to the afterlife. Furthermore, we also find illustrations that show us the journey of the soul through the underworld, as well as the different deities that the deceased encounters on his way. Consequently, the Book of the Dead embodies an important pillar of research, as it provides us with a detailed insight into the religious beliefs of the Pharaonic Empire inhabitants.
America's new race into space with spin launch. The problem with getting things into orbit has always been the rocket equation. That is, the vast majority of what it takes to get a rocket beyond our atmosphere is fuel, more than 90% of it. But what if, in fact, most of that fuel is not actually needed?
I ain't gonna lie, this place scares me. That's why I'm always trying to check in and see where they're at, how much progress they've made and stuff like that, because this place makes me nervous.
105 today. Welcome to the high desert of New Mexico.
In a remote valley of New Mexico, beyond gates that look like they're straight out of a science fiction movie,
Right.
an object that seems like alien technology towers above the terrain. 2.2 million tons of steel, and a little bit taller than the Statue of Liberty.
That's right.
This is A33, short for Accelerator 33.
And it's the world's largest diameter vacuum chamber. So
It's the brainchild of Jonathan Yaney, founder and CEO of Spin Launch.
we're standing here underneath the vacuum chamber. This is the main launch vehicle loading door.
Okay.
One of the really interesting features about this particular system is that it's on hydraulics and the entire system can rotate.
Yaney's company has been at it since 2014, but most of the construction on this project took place during the COVID years. It's an idea designed for a new space age that relies on a concept that dates back to the Stone Age, the sling.
This is essentially a sling launch system, which we were using to hunt with 50,000 years ago. It's simply using modern materials and encased in a large vacuum chamber. So what you have is you have an arm that slowly rotates around and around, driven by an electric motor. And once the tip velocity is sufficient for it to be able to carry a spacecraft into space, we simply let go. And
How fast do y'all think that thing has to go to launch you however distance into space they want something to go? You can rest assured that can't none of us be aboard on that craft.
travels outside of the vacuum chamber through the atmosphere in about 30 seconds into space.
The sling in this case is a carbon fiber tether, which spins the launch vehicle or projectile until it hits 5,000 miles an hour, sending it through an airtight membrane hurtling towards space. and eliminating the need to lift all that fuel used in traditional rockets.
Launching in 3.
I can see the benefits, bro. So how many explosions we've had trying it our way, the way we've been doing it? A lot. There's a lot. And we've had some casualties as well. So I get the need for it. It's just, whew, makes me nervous.
3, 2, 1.
All new forms of transportation usually seem kind of crazy, whether it's a suspension bridge, a train, an aeroplane, even the automobile. And we arrive at these new innovative methods through the process of experimentation.
To reach the necessary speed, the tether has to operate in a vacuum.
Over here, you have a bank of low vacuum mechanical pumps which extract the sort of first amount of air, and then you have the very, very large high vacuum pump which uses an entirely different type of non-mechanical process to extract the remaining molecules of air out of the chamber, allowing you to achieve high vacuum, which allows us to go hypersonic speeds here at sea level.
So you have zero air in there when it's launched.
About 1/1000th of atmosphere, correct.
Yaney was inspired in part by a 1960s U.S. military program that tried using very
Y'all think they've tested it out yet with animals or something like that? Y'all think? What do y'all think? I think we need to keep our eye on this place.
large guns to send projectiles into space. The program was eventually abandoned. But Yaney's been obsessed with all things aeronautics since he was a kid, including flying.
I was sitting on my mom's lap when I was like 3 years old, holding the controls, like learning how to fly. So I've kind of been flying Cessnas my whole life. On some level, you know, flying in the sky, you look up to space, and you say, well, what else is there? And I think it always bugged me that we went to the moon, you know, but then we like stopped. We just sort of never went back. It's like we're, you know, as a civilization, we were promised that we were going to have, you know, we're going to have all of this expansion into space, and it just proved to be astronomically expensive. I would love it if we could just give them some wind. Maybe, I mean, you can knock them over, that's fine too, if you want to.
Welcome to the belly of the beast.
Yaney took us inside the launcher
From here we climb.
to see the motor that provides the circulating force, or torque.
So this entire shaft is spinning into the vacuum chamber, and there's a seal around it which prevents the passage of air around it. So these are relatively straightforward industrial systems that combine
Relatively straightforward.
to create something truly unique. Team Jonathan here, go ahead and begin the test rotation now.
How fast is this shaft spinning?
Yeah, this shaft will spin at about 1200 RPM here in this test facility. So again, fast, but quite a bit slower than your automobile, for example.
Which brings us back to the projectiles, which will eventually be used to transport satellites and much needed equipment into space.
You want it to be heavy in the front, and then you want it to be light in the back, so that it is essentially passively stabilized. It's like a dart, and so you just simply throw it out at a velocity, and it self-guides its way on its own trajectory.
These are some of the projectiles they've been using, a third the size of the one they hope will eventually travel nearly 40 miles above the Earth, where a gas engine will engage and help complete its journey into orbit.
This is all about really retiring the risk around the core technology. So I liken it to our Wright brothers moment, you know, when they flew the very first aircraft. They were, you know, able to fly a few thousand feet, or, you know, then a few miles. They certainly weren't carrying passengers across the Atlantic, but it was a very, very pivotal moment because you proved that the technology could work, and from there you then scale and expand.
An added advantage? This transportation device is completely reusable, making the launch system a heck of a lot easier on the planet.
It represents really the electrification of the space transportation industry. You know, we're seeing so many of these transportation industries becoming electrified right now, yet rockets in their inherent nature rely upon simply pushing massive amounts of combusted products out the back of the rocket. It's really the only way historically to get to space. So
Again, the idea is brilliant. I just think we need some more time with it, but I would definitely love to get away from the traditional sense in which we do it in and sitting back and holding your breath and hoping it doesn't explode or hoping nobody loses their life. And you know what I'm saying? This way here, once you figure it out, you get it down pat, I feel like you should be fine. Other than worrying about, you know what I mean, the mechanics of it, making sure you keep a routine maintenance and all that type of stuff that I know they'll do, but, well, I can't say I know they'll do, but that they'll do. But this seems way more safer and dangerous at the same time. I don't know why I feel both.
So you have to employ a system like spin launch if you want to reduce the carbon footprint of space access, which is incredibly important.
With every phase, the centrifuge has gotten bigger. After 10 successful launches here in New Mexico, Spin Launch is already looking at what's next. A centrifuge 3 times as large as A33. The Spin Launch final phase. Location to be determined.
We automatically think bigger is better, bro. This is where we go wrong.
And when do you think Spin Launch is going to actually be putting things into orbit?
We're going to see Spin Launch putting things in orbit, certainly in the next 5 years.
Is that a promise?
Hold me to it.
Wow.
It's hard to imagine a centrifuge being 3 times as large as the one that they have now, since it's already as tall as the Statue of Liberty. They spent $150 million so far to put together what they have. They're talking about another $250 million they would need if they're going to build this even bigger one that would then finish the project.
That sounds astronomically expensive, but it's probably a lot less than the old-fashioned way.
And part of it's a lot less, because of the way they're doing it, and also because you're not sending humans in.
Yes.
I mean, this is sending equipment and satellites.
Right.
Humans can't withstand tens of thousands of Gs.
Yeah.
Pressure,
in this. But it is a
you
new
could.
idea.
Very cool.
Jeff. You could.
Could try. But Maverick he pulled like 10 Gs
that
in
would be
Top
it.
Gun Maverick. Could do
Well,
that.